What's going on, guys, and welcome back to WWE Network and Chill, where every single week I, Graham Gius and Matthews, break down all the content that I watch on the WWE Network. So what we're going to be doing probably from here on out, depending on what airs on the WWE Network after Raw in the coming weeks. Last week it was Table for Three, which I'll talk about here today, and the week before that it was not story time, it was ride along. So depending on what airs this week, it might be the Goldberg special, if not the week after. It might be the week before Survivor Series. But at any rate, what I'm trying to get at is that while there's new content airing on the WWE Network, I will simultaneously, like I've been doing with the Total Bellas reviews, I'll be continuing to talk about Total Bellas wrapped up, but rather Total Divas. So those reviews will go up on Mondays, and the WWE Network stuff I'll talk about will go up on Sundays. And both will be WWE Network and Chill episodes. So now you're getting 2 episodes a week for the price of 1, essentially. That's what I was doing when I first started the show about a year and a half ago, but I figured it would be better just to do 1 episode. But if I'll be watching Total Divas anyway, which I have been for the past 4.5 years, then I might as well review it. But at any rate, today we're talking Table for Three, the episode with The Shield, Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, and Dean Ambrose, that aired last week after Monday Night Raw on the WWE Network. Now, I pitched this idea, not to say that I came up with the idea, but I was thinking about this many months ago. I actually tweeted, I pulled out the tweet before it aired, before Raw this past week, whatever, saying that a Table for Three with The Shield would be awesome, because we always get 3 people on these episodes, so what better group to have on the show than The Shield? We've had the New Day, we've had the NWO, we've had all these different factions, 3 members of the 4 Horsemen. Why not The Shield? So it was cool to see Roman, Dean, and Rollins all gather together for this episode. They made it sound like at the end they weren't sure if they were going to reunite eventually or not. They talked about a potential reunion, which gives me the impression this was taped a while ago. I'm not sure when. They didn't specify. It might have been over WrestleMania weekend. That tends to be when a lot of these are, or when a lot of these are recorded, which is why they were all together. Or at some point after Dean Ambrose moved over to Raw, and then all 3 of them were on Raw. I'm not exactly sure, but I guess it was filmed well before they eventually did reunite in the month of October. But nonetheless, Roman kicks it off by saying that the last 3 years on their own have been a blur, since they broke off as The Shield, and Roman went his way, and Ambrose went his way, and Rollins went his way. They talk about the long drives they had together, which we kind of see a bit of in the ride-along episode I talked about last week with The Shield. Ambrose's eating habits and how he loves, apparently, breakfast sandwiches. I don't know why that came up, but it did. And Ambrose admits that they've been running nonstop constantly for the past 5 years, which they have been since they debuted exactly 5 years ago this month at Survivor Series 2012. These guys have just been going and going and going and going nonstop. And it's been amazing to see that they really are. If I had to pinpoint 5 guys that are like the workhorses of the WWE right now, it would be these 3. Kevin Owens probably, and AJ Styles. These 3 on Raw, the other 2 on SmackDown, because they have just been, for the better part of the past 5 years, who this company is focused around. These 3 guys right here, Reigns, Rollins, and Ambrose, on both brands. Ambrose admits that for the first few months, the first year even of The Shield, was a very intense time, that it felt real to them, that the chip that they had on their shoulders, which they've talked about before in past interviews, was very much real. They had to prove themselves, and when you look at it from other people's perspective, like in terms of the wrestlers on the roster, you see these 3 guys get called up from NXT and get a ginormous push right out of the gate. Of course, you're going to be jealous or angry or frustrated or whatever. And Ambrose even said that people didn't even want to be attacked when they were the targets of the Shield on TV. Sometimes they made it harder for the Shield to attack that person, because they didn't want to be attacked. So I'm not sure who they're talking about. Obviously, they didn't name any names. They attacked Ryback quite a bit in that first year, but from what I understand, Ryback was very cool with all 3 of those guys, specifically Seth Rollins, so I'm not sure if it was Ryback, or CM Punk came later on, so I'm not sure who it would have been, but it definitely does make sense that other wrestlers on the roster would give them a hard time, because who wouldn't be jealous of these 3 NXT upstarts being put in a prominent position, right from the get-go. At any rate, Reigns talks about how they had no idea what they were talking about in any of their promos. Now, I love the approach of their promos, which probably was better than the promos themselves. No, Ambrose has always been a great mic talker, has always been a great mic worker, a great talker, and they talk about justice and whatnot, but a lot of those promos were just a lot of gibberish. I don't think anyone could have pulled off those promos better than The Shield did. But the way they were filmed, on the handheld camera backstage, and it felt like had an NWO-like vibe. That was what made those promos, but they do make a good point that they had no idea what the hell they were talking about. And Ambrose even said those promos sucked. I don't know if they sucked, but the content isn't exactly remembered as well as the approach of the promos and how they were filmed and the style and whatnot. They talk about the Shield gear, how that made it unique, and how they made it work when others could not. Now, I don't know if they could have made the actual Shield work. Like, I know at one point the reason why the Shield name was given to them was because at one point when they debuted, it was reported, and they even said this too, it's not even reported, it's been confirmed in various other podcasts, that they were going to come in, storm the ring with shields in their hands. And obviously they thought it was cool in theory. In execution, it probably would have been very dumb. So thankfully, I'm not, that didn't come to fruition, but I'm not so sure they would have been able to make that work, as well as the tactical vests they've been wearing for the past 5 years on and off. And they talk about not having the NXT head start. Now, like, this group wasn't together in NXT like the Wyatt family was, or this faction was, or that faction. They all came up at a really random time. Ambrose had no NXT experience. Now, he had been in FCW for a while, but I don't think he appeared on a single episode of NXT before he was called up as part of the Shield at Survivor Series 2012. Reigns had a few matches under his belt in NXT, but not a long, lengthy run. Rollins was really the only one that was in NXT for a while before the Shield debut. He was NXT champion, obviously, the inaugural NXT champion. But at the same time, I can see what they're talking about, because at that point 5 years ago, NXT was far from what it is today. It was not even close to being as popular or watched or well-known. When Rollins showed up at the main roster, some people knew who he was. I knew who he was. Most other people did not. So I completely agree with what they were saying there as well. They talk about getting super, 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 super hot in the spring of 2014, going babyface, beating the Outlaws and Kane at WrestleMania, beating Evolution in the main event of a pay-per-view, and then splitting up the next night. Ambrose talks about that progression, and Rollins admits that he was not used to being a singles wrestler at first. I mean, he was a singles wrestler down in NXT and Ring of Honor and whatnot, but for a while he was not. I mean, Ambrose was kind of doing the United States champion thing for a while on his own, but he was still part of the Shield. Rollins had been a tag team guy for a long-ass time, for almost 2 years, so obviously he wasn't so used to that when he was broken off on his own again when the Shield split up in the summer of 2014. And Ambrose has talked about this before, but he talked about on this episode how he was not prepared to make people like him. So throughout the Shield's run, whether they were heels or baby faces or whatever, he had intentionally gone out of his way to make himself unlikable, to make people not like him or hate him or whatever, because he always knew when the Shield broke up, he would be the heel. Well, he didn't really know it too well, because obviously when the Shield broke up, he was the breakout babyface. Rowan was too, but Ambrose really got hot there for a while in that second half of 2014. And he was not prepared for that. He has always been a natural heel, and the funny thing is that he's been a babyface ever since. He has not turned in the last 3 years since the Shield split up. Obviously, that'll change, and if anything, the Shield run will end with Ambrose going heel, I believe. It'd be cool if it was Reigns. It won't happen, but Ambrose, I'm sure, will be the one to turn on his brethren this time around, I'm sure, and which is going to be cool to see, because we have yet to see Ambrose as a full-fledged heel on his own on the main roster. But at any rate, he said he planted seeds for being a heel, and he really did not try anything at all, and he did not think it would work. Like, he would come out to generic-ass music and just walk out to the ring, but people still loved him. Like, he didn't go out of his way to make himself, to endear himself to the audience. People just naturally liked Ambrose. And he talked about his gear and his jeans, how he would just literally walk out and wrestle in his jeans, in his street clothes. And for whatever reason, he got over. People really, really liked Ambrose for a long time. And people still, obviously, he's very much over. But he was not expecting that, because he was such a natural heel. But it got over when he did not expect it to. And I think officials can say the same thing. Rollins talked about his new gear and the Power Ranger-like suit that he would wear to the ring for a while there in 2014, and the gear that he had, and how he wasn't really used to not shaving his legs, so to speak. I guess Ambrose was saying the same thing, because he was wearing trunks for a long time in NXT. On the main roster, they would always wear the tactical vests and the pants and whatever, so he didn't really have to worry about shaving, I guess. So we talked about that, which was funny. And Ambrose talked about his gear as well. Like I said, they discussed shaving, they compare chest hair, because he didn't really have to worry about that for a long time too in the Shield, and he did have to start worrying about that once he changed the gear over and he got rid of the top half of his gear, the Power Ranger-like suit that I talked about. Anyway, Ambrose talks about turning into Wolfman with his chest there. Regardless, they move on from there by talking about how not every individual in a group has success beyond the split. How, like, when the NWO broke, I mean, that was kind of a bad example because it was Hulk Hogan, Kevin Nash, and Scott Hall. But, like, the Legacy or, you know, certain stables, they break up and certain people break out, other people don't. In the Shield, all three guys went on to become superstars, main event level, world champion caliber competitors. And, I mean, I think we all figured that, but it's very rare something like that happens, especially in 3 years, too. In the matter of 3 years, they have, I think, 6 world titles between them. Roman, I think, is a 3-time world champion. Ambrose is a 1-time champ. And Rollins is a 2-time champ. And you throw in countless tag titles, countless mid-card belts, winning the Royal Rumble, winning the Money in the Bank, headlining WrestleMania. It's pretty crazy. They've really done it all, and they'll continue to achieve more in the years ahead. But they've done quite a bit in the matter of 3 years. And they admit that 3 big egos don't always work. When you have 3 big egos between 3 notable names, it doesn't always gel well, but Ambrose talks about that they all had the same personality, and they all had the same chip on their shoulder, and that was what worked for them. That was what made them such a successful stable. They're driven, their drive and their determination to be the best out there on the WWE roster, and they really were the best thing there in WWE for a long time, throughout their entire run, from 2012 through 2013, and even in 2014 as well. They were all going for the same goal, and that's what they need to make it work, and that's what happened with them, and that's why they worked, because they were all gunning for the same goal. And they said it was easy for them. There was never an issue, and the only times they would ever really butt heads was over creative ideas, like we should do this or do that, but then one person would come up with an idea, and the other person would add to it. So it really was a piece of cake for them, apparently, in the chemistry they have. That really speaks to the chemistry they had as a unit for a long time there in the Shield. They praise Joey Mercury and say that not Triple H, they don't say this, but not Triple H or Kurt Angle, but rather Joey Mercury is the 4th member of the Shield for everything that he did for them behind the scenes and the guidance and the advice that he would give those guys while they were first starting out in the company. Giving advice to the Shield even before they became the Shield, down in FCW, saying what they should do, what they should not do, and really guiding them along throughout WWE. They did everything together, and Rollins says he cannot wait for the reunion and how it's going to be different because so much has changed even in the matter of 3 years. And Ambrose says, you're looking at 3 Beyoncés right here between myself, Rollins, and Reigns, which is pretty funny. So, like I said, obviously this was filmed a few months back because it was before the seeds were planted for a Shield reunion. Maybe it was after Rollins and Ambrose got back together, they reunited, and then Reigns would obviously come back in the picture a few months later. So I'm looking forward to their first match back. We didn't get that at TLC because Reigns got sick. Hopefully we can't get that at some point in the near future with Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, and Dean Ambrose all as one unit. The Shield versus whoever, whether it be Kane in the bar or Miz in the bar or the Miztourage or whatever trio they put in front of him. That would be a great match to see at some point down the road. So really enjoyed this episode of Table for 3 with the Shield. Not that newsworthy, but they did talk about certain stuff from throughout their run, the breakup and the post-breakup stuff. So all 3 of them have a lot to offer here, have a lot to offer a lot and, contribute quite a bit to this episode and making it enjoyable. All 3 guys are great. They obviously have awesome chemistry. And if you're a Shield fan, you'll enjoy this episode as much as I did. So check it out on the WWE Network. Table for 3, Shield Reunion with Roman Reigns, Dean Ambrose, and Seth Rollins. That being said, guys, thank you for checking out the latest episode of WWE Network and Chill. Be sure to like it, comment, share the video, and also subscribe to the channel for more daily content. And like I said at the start of the show, I'll be back tomorrow right here on the channel with my full review of the Season 7 premiere of Total Divas that aired last Wednesday on the E! Network. Until then, guys, I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.